Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning to this new lesson. Today we are here to discuss a very important topic of paper 2 for our computer science subject of O levels, and that very important topic is nothing other than the arrays. Arrays is a mathematical concept that is used in the programming, and it can be regarded as one of the difficult topics for majority of the students. We will try here to make it simple so that our students can understand it. And it is important to state here that if the student is well versed with this topic, he is a potential candidate to go for the A star result. Without this topic, you cannot achieve the A star in your paper 2 of the computer science. So let's start. Our topic today is arrays, and before going into these theoretical discussions, let's start up with an example. Here we have two examples, and I have tried to write a code without the arrays and also with the arrays. So coming up, let's come to this first example where we have a code that is without the arrays. And what this code performs, it has a start, it has a stop, and it declares three variables as id1, id2, id3 as integer, and then it asks the user to enter three IDs, it prints that, and then it collects the three values and stores them as the id1, id2 and id3. So the user will input the three values, and then we print this. Your IDs are print ID1, ID2 and ID3, and that's all. So this is a very simple example. In terms of that, it is dealing with the three variables. The writer of this pseudocode or this programming code just thought about naming the variables, and he decided that I will use ID1, ID2 and ID3 because the name of these variables are not that important to be more meaningful. We just need IDs, so it is better to do it as ID1, ID2 and ID3. Now the question is, what will happen if the programmer is asked to enter the IDs of 250 employees of that office and just enter their IDs and then print their IDs? So this code will go into, you can say, 500 plus lines, because you have to declare it ID 1, 2, 3, so and so up to the ID 250. Then you will say enter your all of IDs, and there will be 250 times input, and it will start with input ID 1, then it asks input ID2, then it asks input ID3, and it will continue until it asks input ID 250. You need 250 times this input or the variable names, and then when you are to print them, your IDs are, then in the print line there will be 250 repetitions like ID1, ID2, ID3, 4, 5, 600, 150, 200, and last will be the 250. So is this 250 variables are good to do with this approach? The answer is no. It is not good, it is not professional that you declare 250 times, then you input 250 times, and then you do the print statement and variables again for the 250 times. And just imagine how difficult it will become if you have an organization that has 10,000 employees and you have to register their IDs. Then it is insane that you will do this for the 10,000 lines. And if you have to print out the name and IDs, then you have to use this print structure again for 10,000 lines, which is not possible. So this approach with a large variable values is not useful. But the professional programming is always of that shape. So what we will do? The answer is this second example. We will come up with this topic that we have just started, arrays. So before I go into its definition, I will repeat that code. You see here, it comes with a start, and in declare it says ID with a bracket as integer. If you compare this line with this line, the difference is only in this area. And how is this different? In without arrays you have to write all the variable names, but in this case you are giving id, and in the bracket you are mentioning that how many variables. This line translates id three variables as integer. So if you need 250 variables, you will just write in this bracket as 250, and all of them will be declared. In case of 6,000 people, you will say declare ID, and in the bracket you will write 6,000, and the 6,000 variables will be declared. So this headache with 250 times is resolved by this single line. You are writing declare ID of array size 3 as integer. This technique of making more than one variables is called arrays. Now, what is the meaning of this ID bracket 3 in the declare line? It means ID 0, ID 1 and ID 2. This, this is the name of three variables that have been made by this single word. The first variable always comes with 0, and since you have stated here that you need three variables, so for the first, second and third, its index number will be 1 less than this declaration. When you use declare, it means 3, meaning that 1, 2 and 3. But when we break down the name of those variables, id3 means that there are now three variables, but the name of the first variable will be starting with the 0 number, the next one will be 1, and the next one will be 2. So let's come to the next. Print enter three IDs. This line is similar to this line, and now in the input I will write id 0, id 1 and id 3, 2. These are the three variables, but in the declaration line I used this standard word, and I was not required to repeat over here. The first value will go into id 0, the second value will go into id 1, and the third value will go into id 2. And similarly, when you want to print them, your IDs are, again you will write print ID 0, ID 1 and ID 2. Let's compare these two print lines, this one and this one. The difference you can see is there are no brackets, but here we have the set of bracket with each of the variable. When there are brackets, that means it is a technique of arrays. And when there are no brackets, this is the simple method. You named it in this way, so there are no brackets, but now id bracket 0, id 1 and id 2 means that in the declare you told the computer that I will be using three variables. The name of the variable will be id, and in the brackets I will use three variables. And what will be those three? If we start with 0, the first will be id 0, the second will be id 1 and the third will be the id 2, and collectively these are three values. That is why over here it shows 3. This is the starting point of arrays. You can question here that it is easy to do the three inputs in this way. It looks like a more confusing, but just question yourself. If you need 250 IDs, then this is very long code. But over here, you can see over here, you will just use the 300 and your 300 variables will be declared. I will explain another example now to further elaborate this. Let's come to a more explanatory example. In this example, we are dealing with 20 IDs. The question is, enter 20 IDs of your employees and then print those IDs. Now let's come to the solution, and you will see over here it is a start. It declare ID 20 as integer. That means you have told your computer to make 20 variables. Name of every variable will be 20, but this number means that this number will continue from 0 up to 19. So the total will be 20. Now print enter 20 IDs and then you will write 20 times input ID 0, input ID 1, input ID 2, 3, 4, 15, 16, 17, and the last will be input ID 19. Now you have to print it again. You will start print and then you will start with ID 0, ID 1, ID 2, ID 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, up to last will be the 20. So this is slightly better than the non-arrays solution, but still it has a problem. The student may question that I am again bound to do this 20 times, and I am also bound to print this 20 times, so it keeps my effort to be maximized. Only this line saves little of my effort. So how we can get ourselves efficient with this 20 times of printing? The answer is no in the next example. Now let's come to the next example that will complete your concept about the arrays. And that will make you realize that yes, this is useful than the non-array code. In front, you can see over here, we have a code again. And this code is similar to the previous example, but it deals with 200 IDs. It is a start. It declares ID 200 as integer. Now I am into larger number of values. This says that this program is using 200 variables and name of them will be ID. Now just come to the next line. It says print enter 200 IDs, and now instead of repeating the input for 200 times, I am using a for loop. You know how the for loop works. You can consult to the previous lessons and find out what is the working of the for. The for loop I have placed over here, and inside the for loop I am using input ID m. This is a loop. For m is equal to 0 to 199. That means this loop will repeat for 200 times. Its first repetition will be with the m is equal to 0, and its last repetition will be with m is equal to 199. And just you see this technique. For the first time, it will say input ID 0, because the first value of the m is 0. And when it says input ID 0, your first input will be stored in ID 0. Then it goes back, and for the second time it will become input ID 1. So your next value will be stored inside the next place. If you see over here, I am creating an array. The name of this array is ID, and these are its locations 0, 1, 2, 3, and they will go up to 199. Now for this loop, when it runs for the first time, it will become input ID 0 and if the ID of the first person is 1005, so at the ID 0, it will store that employee's ID. When it comes back and gives its second repetition, it will become 1. It becomes input ID 1. And what you enter was 2050, but ID 1 it will save over here. Then it goes back for the third time and it is input ID 2. If you enter 3000 as the ID, it will be stored in ID 2 and it will continue for the 200 times, and its last run will be input ID 199. And for 199, if you say 5750, it will be stored in its last cell, and in between all the values will be saved. This is all working of the processor, but for you, this arrays technique has helped you to use only 3 lines of code, and that will result into 200 inputs collected in one go. This is the perfect benefit of using arrays. Now, if you want to print all those 200 arrays values, you also need to do another loop. Just come to this place. It says print your 200 IDs are, or then we use for n is equal to 0 to 199 again. Why I am using this n, I have told you many times that do not use a variable for the second time that has been used in the for loop. First, in the for loop, I use the m. Here I have decided that I will use another new name, and for me it is good to use n. For n is equal to 0 to 199, print id n, and next, for the first print, it will become print id 0. The processor will go into ID 0, will pick up this 1005 and print it. For the second run, the n will become 1. This line will become print ID 1. It will come into this table and it will jump into ID 1 and it will show you 2050. For the third time, it will go back. The n will become 2. Print ID 2, it will come into this ID and 2 and it will show you 3000, and in this way it will continue for 200 times. So how good it is: 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 and 11. Your code is only of 11 lines, but this code collects 200 in IDs and it also prints 200 different IDs. 400 lines of action are contained within the 11 lines of the code. This is the beauty of the arrays. Okay, let's come to this theoretical explanation now, and it will become very easy after having explained those examples. What is an array? It is a collection of more than one variable values. Declare names 50 as string. This is 50 variables and all of them are names and their data type is string. So this definition says the arrays are a collection of more than one variable values under one name. All of the 50 have this same variable name, but they are differentiated with their index numbers. The name of the array consists of two parts. This first part is called variable name and this second part is called index number. So the 50 names are differentiated with the index numbers. Different values are identified by their index number. Hopefully this clears you the definition. Now coming to our syllabus. In our syllabus we have two types of arrays. The first type of array is called one-dimensional array, or it is also referred as 1D. The second, the two-dimensional array, and it is referred as 2D. In the practical programming there is also three-dimensional arrays and four-dimensional arrays. but in our O levels and even our A levels, the syllabus refrains to go into the third 3D type, and we will always be working with the 1D and 2D. How they are different? If there is one set of bracket, the array is created in this form. I have also explained it in my last example. This is a one-dimensional array, and it always has one set of bracket. But if in our next lessons we will explain that if there are two set of brackets, then the draw of this structure will be in the form of tables which has rows and columns. This kind of array which has two index numbers side by side, that is called two-dimensional arrays. I will go into the details of 2D in my next lesson. This lesson today is based on the one-dimensional arrays. Now let's come to the features of the arrays. Arrays can hold same data type values. If you come to the previous examples, you will see over here, I mentioned 50. This line has 50 names and all the names are of the data type string. That is what this point says, that arrays can hold same data type values. They will be all names. It is not possible that there are 25 roll numbers and 25 names. All of them will be names and their type will be string. Arrays has a fixed size to hold values. You have told over here that I will be using 50 names. This is the second point, that it is given a fixed size in the start. The name of arrays consists of the variable name and index. Again, this is the variable name and this numbering is called index. So array name will always be made up of two parts. Coming to the point number 4, name is assigned in the declaration. This declare line is called declaration, and in this line we have to decide that what name I will use. This is the time that you have to decide just like a variable. Point number 5, index number gives location of the value in the array. If this is your one-dimensional array, this is your names, this is 1, 2, 3 up to say 50, and here a name Ali is stored in the index number 2. So when you write names 2, this will always refer to Ali because you are writing the index number 2, and what is stored in the index number 2, that will be the answer. Fixed index number is always the first index number is always 0. In very first example I told you that the first location of every array always begins with the index number 0. So, what will be the impact on the last value if you are using 50? The last index will become 49 because we started with 0. This is the point number 7. The last index number is always 1 less than the given size of the array. In the declare I said 50, but in the structure the last location is 49 starting with 0. One-dimensional array is used to hold a column filled with the values. You can see over here, this is a column. It works with column. Two-dimensional array is used to hold the records inside a table. I just gave you a sketch a few minutes ago. In our next lesson, we will go into the details of the 2D. And the last point, for loop is used mainly to control the contents of an array. In the very last example, you have seen 11 lines dealing with the 200 values. How that became possible? That became possible only with the help of the for loop we have used over here. So the for loop is the key of using arrays. You can use the while also. but majority of the times and most programmers prefer to go into arrays with the help of the for loop. So this is a concept building lesson. In the next lesson, I will give you a few examples of the one-dimensional array, and then I also include the contents of the two-dimensional within the next lesson as well. So collectively, the two lessons, this one as the next one, will cover your arrays concepts for the O levels syllabus. Thank you.